Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the costumeco channel. And I'm absolutely thrilled and delighted to have with me my guest, Jennifer Bryan. She's the costume designer for Pluribus. I'm a massive fan of the show. I'm a huge science fiction fan. So, of course, Jennifer, this is like totally in my wheelhouse. And I actually had reached out to you before I even heard from Kat. So I'm kind of so pleased
Oh,
that we're here to be
cool.
able to talk to you about this
Yeah,
today.
well, I'm great. This is great. I'm glad we connected. So
Absolutely.
thank you so much for tracking me down and having me.
Yes. And I was mentioning before we started that I love your jacket. The motif on your jacket is beautiful.
Thank you.
So you look
Thank
lovely.
you. Thank you.
So to start, just to get to know you a little bit better, I wanted to know, like, you've got quite an extensive career. I was looking at your bio and everything. So do you want to tell me a little bit about this? I mean, I know you have a very extensive Broadway career, but also, of course, you worked on Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul.
hmm
So why don't
hmm
you just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into costume design?
All right. Literally, I got into costume design literally through a fluke. But I'm Jamaican. I grew up in Jamaica. High school, those were my formative years there. And then I came to the States to go to uni, to go to university, and graduated from Pratt Institute and in fashion design and merchandising, thinking that I would go into, be an executive in retail or, work in one of the big major department stores, of which there are now very few. But and I ran across a classmate of mine who had graduated, and we hadn't seen each other since we got out of college. And I told her what I was doing, and she says, they're doing, the movies in New York." And I'm like, "Huh?" And she goes, "Yeah, the costume department." At that time, I thought I never gave it any thought. I didn't even know that such a a, a job category existed. So she was like, "Go see if you can get a job as an intern." So I went on this little movie, got this job as an intern, and that was it. Boom. It was a thing. I was like, "Oh my God, I want to do this." And then eventually got my union card in New York, started working on Broadway as a costumer. And so that's how I started. And then later on, I think back in the mid 90s was my first design credit, Major Pain. It's very funny. And then after that, yeah, it started picking up. hmm
One thing I always hear from designers is at the beginning, they're always sort of amazed that this is a job. This is something that you can do for a
Yeah,
living.
yeah.
And when they
Because
discover
it's
it, they're like, there's no going
yeah,
back.
there's no going back. It was like, it was a sort of like it was there in plain sight because obviously I'm watching TV and I'm going to the movies, but I never made that connection until someone basically took me and go over here. And there I was. And I found a home in terms of what gives me enough passion and drive to get up in the morning and go to work.
Now, we're here today to talk about Pluribus, which is this show on Apple Plus. It is getting rave reviews. So, but we're going to talk about the costumes today. And I'm really dying to know some of the things that we're going to discuss. But I wanted to start off with, you've worked with Vince Gilligan several times, obviously.
hmm
And so you have this relationship already with him. So, how did that inform working with him on this show? Like, I'm assuming he just called you right up and said, "Hey, I'm doing this new show. Do you want to come join?" Like, how did that all work out?
Well, it was a little bit more subtle than that. But yes, my relationship with the Gilliverse, as we like to call
Oh,
it,
yeah, I love that.
started started on the final season of Breaking Bad, and it was a long extended season, and I was able to really do some really great stuff for that season's finale. And then we kind of got wind that he was going to do a spin-off. We didn't know what it was, and it's not truly a spin-off, a prequel going back, focused on Jimmy Saul, the lawyer. And so when that got finalized, I was asked, would I do that show? And I was thrilled. I was over the moon. Six wonderful seasons. And in between, I would do other projects, when we were on hiatus. And then Better Call Saul ends, and we're like, what is he? Is he gonna come up with something else? What's going on? You know how crews are. We're always like
Hmm.
buzzing about our next project, our next job, where it's gonna come from. And it wasn't too long we heard that he had written a role for Ray, and it had nothing to do with Breaking Bad, or in her case, Better Call Saul, except that it would be set in Albuquerque and that it was sci-fi. Started getting dribs and drabs. And then he said, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, nothing. This is, I really love for you to stay on and do the show." So that's how that happened. Yes. So it was a departure in what I do, but the bonus and the benefit of working with the same group of people that I'd worked for so many years.
Oh, absolutely. Did you bring the same team on that you had on Better Call Saul?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh,
Pretty
that's great.
much.
So you already have those relationships.
Yes, had those relationships, and it's really, in this industry, it's really vital, and to kind of nurture those, and you don't get it often because we're we're freelancers. We go from project to project, and sometimes one show may call for a different crew structure than another. But yeah, my ACD, Katie Murphy, and my costume supervisor, Stephanie Bernstein Pratt, the two of these guys, they have my back, and the rest of our set crew. I would say 90% of us moved on to do Pluribus.
Wonderful. Now, so when you first read the scripts, I don't know if you got them like at the beginning, like just in the early stages, or if you had to wait till the final scripts. But what was the costume direction in there versus like, some of your conversations that you had with Vince during that whole
Mhm.
process?
The first thing I received on paper was an outline. I don't think that at the time, because they wanted me to get started, but production script, obviously, that goes through stages. So I got the outline, which was sufficient for me to start to look at what this world was going to be about. And also with the outline, I had preliminary meetings with Vince at the writer's studio in Burbank. And that's where he sort of, like, through conversation with him, sort of embellished a little bit more what his characters were going to be, and some costume aspects I would put that he would like to see. One of them was, my mandate was, he didn't want it to look like any other kind of sci-fi disruptive dystopian world. So we're not doing zombies in zombie clothing. We're just not doing that. And he wanted it to look different. And it was a bit of a challenge. I had to really think it out. I did a lot of research. I watched a lot of film in that genre. And it occurred to me, like, why do they have to look significantly different when this is a subtle thing that's happened? They weren't expecting it. It happened in the moment. And so that gave me the starting point for the others, right?
Hmm.
The folks that got the virus, with the exception of the 13, was that it happened in the moment. The day they were working at TGIF Fridays, or the day they were delivering packages for DHL. So that's where I was able to put some on the surface, a normalcy. And then as days go by, obviously people have to change clothes. Then you started to see some disconnect in clothing, because my idea, for the core idea, was that since they're the hive mind, they think universally, then clothing doesn't have to do what it traditionally does for us. It doesn't have to relay status, or wealth, or religion, or your ethnicity, or your geographical location, or your culture. All clothing has to do at that point is to shelter and protect the body, like a crab has a shell. when he doesn't put earrings on it, So we didn't do
Hmm.
any adornment. We stripped that down to strictly functional clothing, which is basically to protect the human body. And
Yeah,
I mixed
I didn't even,
cultures. Yeah.
yeah, I didn't even notice to see if like there was jewelry or embellishments, but I guess you stripped all of that away. And I guess glasses you would keep because that's functional,
Yes,
correct?
glass because
Yeah,
it's functional. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
absolutely.
probably um yeah. And I'll tell you a story about that. I've spoken about it before. Is that Vince was going, well, no belts. And I go, Vince, the guys need belts or else the pants
Hmm.
are gonna fall down. And then he was like, yeah, you're right. So and if I did
Yeah, because it's
hats,
functional again. It's a
it's
functional
functional,
thing.
right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't a belt as to accessorize a blouse or a skirt. It had to do its function. And for hats, same thing. So you'll see guys in a hard hat, for example, because you need that for head protection. You'll see hats like that, but casual little beret or a cute little, fascinator or something. No, those things went away.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I noticed, and this is just not me, like everyone noticed, like you go on Reddit, this is talked about quite a bit, is the use of color in the series. Like, for
Hmm.
instance, the protective gear that the scientists wear. I think you've got like pink and purple and blue, and then you've got Carol's yellow jacket, which obviously matches the branding of the happy face, which of course when I was a kid in the 70s, that was always a really big deal, right? The
Yes.
happy face logo. And then also I even noticed Carol's fans, like they dressed up in that purple color, which I guess is the theme color of her books. So
Of
do
our
you want to
books,
tell
yeah.
me,
Mhm.
yeah, do you want to tell me a little bit about that and how you came to those decisions?
Yes. So, starting with the purple for her fans, she writes in her own mind somewhat condescendingly because she thinks she's a much better writer and she's writing below her weight. But she wrote about these purple sands of Waikaro, the title of her book. And of course, normally fans would hitch on to something like that. And so purple becomes a color in her novels. I don't know where she came up, where Carol comes up with the idea of these purple sands with these pirate fantasy romance books.
Hmm.
So
I'm actually wearing
at
purple.
the
I just realized that. So I must be a fan of Carol.
yes, of a romance
Of a
novels.
romance sci-fi.
Yeah. So what we did is that when she does her book signing at Barnes and Noble, the fans, just like if you had fans that are on a team that come up in the colors. So they came up with the purple, and then her outfit at that point that I dressed her in is really uh, a disguise to her true self.
Hmm.
She's beautifully coiffed. She looks very approachable and stylish and warm and engaging in this beautiful suit. And I deliberately picked this palette and this idea that it will be something that her readers, her fans might aspire to, like looking like her,
Hmm.
just right, just the right notes. And of course, as we know, she sheds that facade pretty quickly after the book tour, and
Absolutely.
we see a certainly more disheveled and miserable person.
Yeah, and I was wondering if maybe Helen helps to pick out her wardrobe.
Yes, Helen really, as we discover, in a posthumous kind of way, Helen really kept her on track and just was a guardrail for her. And with the book tour, managing her, and yes.
And then here I've got a picture of the scientists, and they're
Mm,
like almost like bubblegum colors.
yes, that was deliberate. So we had to get surgical um lab coats, and I didn't want to do all white because it was just too sanitary and been done before.
Hmm.
And I didn't want to do all blue because then it would look too much like a hospital. The special chemical and protective gear that we saw the scientists working in a lab with the rats was
Hmm.
already blue, which is authentic. So I did not want to kind of oversaturate the show. So it's a subtle it's a subtle nod to the happiness of the others by putting them in this array of happy colors. And I just think I think it worked really, really well. And I think subliminally gave you the idea that, oh, this is some these people are cool and calm and, have some, they just put on whatever needs to put on. So there's no need for like a strong uniformity of colors in
Mm.
like lab gear. So yeah, I
It kind
just to
of
give it a
almost,
little punch.
to me, it kind of indicated that something isn't quite right, though. Like
Yes,
something is, there's
yes,
a little bit, it's a bit unsettling, I think, because as you
yes.
say, normally they would just be in white or blue or something like that. But the fact that it
Hmm.
was like all these happy, beautiful, bright colors just sort of made me think, okay, something is going to
So,
go wrong.
what's up? Right.
what's, what's up exactly? Now, now, by the way, I love Carol's leather jacket. I'm sure people are going to want to find out where this came from because it's a beautiful leather
Yes.
jacket.
Yes.
So,
So this
yeah.
jacket, yes, came from me. Um,
Ah,
yeah, this is an unoriginal design. Yeah, some people thought it was purchased, but it wasn't.
oh,
um, After getting the script and seeing what our actions were going to be, in that first episode, I
mhm.
realized that she was going to be in the dark a lot outside the parking lot of the country western um, place, and then having to, when the thing happens to Helen and Helen collapses, she's got to drag Helen's body onto the back of the truck, and then she's got to go to the hospital. She's got a lot of physical work. So the fabric, the material choice became very important, and it was leather. And then I decided, well, what color it needs to be, and I chose this yellow because yellow does it serves two functions, just like the O2 Happy Lab Coat colors, and something slightly off. Yellow signals to the brain caution, it's like
Mm.
something's going to happen. And then on the practical side, it's bright enough to glow in the dark so she wouldn't recede in those night scenes that we had to shoot, outside the bar.
Yeah, because you
So
can
that
really
was
see the
why.
difference between the interior
Yes.
shot and
Mm-hmm.
then when she's in her living room.
Yes.
Poor
So
Carol.
yeah, it's a great color. It worked in all the different lighting environments that it had
Yeah.
to work in. And yeah, I had a lot of fun designing that.
You
That
must have made a
was
bunch of them too, because she probably had all kinds
yeah,
of like stuff thrown at her, and during that whole that event,
totally. I
the
had to find the
joining.
leather and I
Yeah.
couldn't find the color. And so finally, I have a wonderful leather maker, Jonathan Logan in Los Angeles, and he was able to find it and bring it in from France. So that particular yellow leather, that's where that came from. And then I think we built about 8 duplicates.
Yeah, and it looks really like I call it like buttery, like a buttery leather, like really soft and
It
supple.
is,
Like,
yes.
yeah.
Well, it's French.
Oh yeah, very. Ooh, but I love the design of it too. So you kind of, it looks like you've got a bit of a motorcycle. What were some of your
Yes.
influences on that?
Yes, it has a motor jacket
Mm,
influence, but I also kind of feminized it a bit by taking away some of the you know, straight lines that you might see in a motorcycle jacket. If you notice, the hips across the edge of the jacket is slightly curved, which gives it
mhm.
like a softer feel. And zippers are concealed, just some seaming at the shoulders that kind of made it a little bit more flattering to her body. And I shaped it with a little waist so it's not boxy. So yeah, there were a lot of tweaks. So yeah, a motor jacket was the influence, but then I had to kind of, trim it and shape it to what I knew that Ray was going to have to do and work in and be physical and comfortable at the same time. Yeah.
Now, there one of the things that the viewers loved is that so at the moment of the joining, as you mentioned, there's people who are in their like their uniforms, their day to day, UPS or DHL or TGIF Fridays. We don't have that chain in the States, but I have been to one, so I knew what it was
Hmm.
with the flare on the
Hmm.
So you were mentioning already your decision behind that. So what made you decide on those particular uniforms though? Was it just because they're
Well, it was
identifiable?
scripted. It was
Oh,
actually
they were scripted.
scripted.
Okay.
Yeah, it was yeah, and TGF is a big chain. It's along with Applebee's and all of those fast food companies masquerading as restaurants. And I think Vince again brilliant in just choosing that kind of middle of America occupation. A very
Yes.
sort of not too elevated, and the colors again were perfect because up pops that yellow in the
Mhm.
DHL uniform. So it just worked for me so great.
Yeah, and then I love like Larry, for instance. He's wearing like his bike ensemble, like he's been out biking, and then suddenly he goes to Carol's house to do some yard cleanup or whatever.
Yes,
And
he
so
was
she drags him in the
cycling.
house.
He was cycling up in the Albuquerque Hills or something in his cycling outfit, in his spandex, in his slightly too tight spandex.
Exactly.
And then the
Uh,
joining happens, and the next thing you know, he's like cleaning up Carol's front yard.
yeah, and the
Oh
mayor. I
my
think the
gosh.
mayor was there too.
And that actually is the mayor of
Oh, you're kidding! So
Albuquerque.
that's the real
For
mayor of
real. For
Albuquerque.
real. Yeah.
That's
Yeah. It was
hilarious.
fun
I thought it
having
was just
him.
that
No.
is hilarious. I love that. So much humor in this too, which really helps, by the way, just because it's such a, it could be such a dark,
Dark,
even though it's
yes.
bright, that it could be super bleak, but just those elements of levity really like just are
Hmm.
amazing, like chef's
Hmm.
kiss kind of thing.
And you also know that Ray, has a very comedic aspect in her toolbox as an actress.
Hmm.
And yeah, there were times when she brought the funny out to kind of balance off, you know, the stuff that's happening.
Now I know. Okay, so obviously you've worked with Ray many seasons on Better Call Saul, and so
Mhm.
what was that like? First off, I was going to tell you, I saw her in an interview where she was saying that she doesn't even have to look in the mirror when she works with you. You put something on her, she feels very comfortable. I can just go to set. That's it. So, what was that collaboration like
Oh,
working with Ray on this show with a very different kind of grumpier character compared to
yeah,
her
that is
character in Better
so
Call Saul?
nice and so sweet and so generous of her to say.
Mhm.
So I absolutely love her as a human being. Admire and respect her as an actress, and also how open from Saul, how open she was to the idea of what Kim Wexler could look like. And we had many, many, sidebar conversations just between her and I as how we felt she should be represented. And we were absolutely on the same path of reasoning and thinking. So that made it great. I didn't have to sell a big agenda of a look, because what I was suggesting to her, she got it. One of the main things was that, she's starting off bottom rank lawyer. She should be wearing lawyer business type suits that she picked up at a department store. Or maybe she got them as separates and she put them together, and kind of keep it very, very real, as opposed to um, high brand, obviously couture designer suit, which people would spot right away, and it does not fit into the reality of the character. So we were absolutely on board with that aspect. And then from that, just grew this understanding of adding realism into the characters' costumes, into their clothing. Their closets needs to make sense to who they are and how they live. And we just carried that same relationship into Pluribus, even though it was completely different from a corporate lawyer. Far from it. And so that's how that worked. Yeah.
Mhm. And I mean, this is sort of, I find this is sort of her go to look often. She likes jeans and a tee. Like that seems to be
Mm-hmm.
her comfort clothing. But then she
Mm-hmm.
might, like she has a variety of things. But one of the things I wanted to ask you about, and I was just noticing this, not while I was watching the show, but just I was looking at some of her clothes. Um, had it. some of the color and even the silhouettes at times seems to sort of mirror her mood. So I think, like for instance, when she is falling in love with Zosa, she feels it looks like she's wearing like more romantic colors, whereas when she's going like where she's isolated, she seems to be in more gloomy kind of colors and silhouettes. So is that sort of what you were heading for or aiming for?
Yes, it's deliberate.
Hmm.
When she's isolated in her home, she is her true self. She doesn't have to perform, pretend. And
Hmm. Get some pictures here of her.
yeah, and I think also, you know, she had a wife, so she was very
Mhm.
practical, and her clothing, just what it needed, except where there were times when I think when
Oh, sorry, wrong person.
Helen, when Helen took her out someplace, maybe, or they had an event, then they would put on that facade. So it's very relaxed. And then when she meets up with Zosha further on in the episode, where I think she's trying to kind of like win her over, you might
Hmm.
see an upgrade in the clothing. But I mean, this shot that you have on the screen with her in a black jacket when the helicopter is coming down, it's, to me, I chose black. I think it was the only time I had her in black. It was to really display a resistance, a resistance to what's going to happen.
Yeah,
And, yeah.
like here, the other thing I was going to ask you, at times it even looks like Zosha and Carol are almost kind of dressed similarly. Like they
Mm-hmm.
almost look like they're like maybe Zosha's starting to go into more what Carol's comfort zone is, like moving away from some of her more elevated looks. Was that also
Yes.
purposeful?
That was purposeful because Zosha has to find an area, she has to find connectivity,
Hmm.
and with Carol, where Carol can a relatability, I would say. So they go on this hiking trip to go look at look through the telescope and look at the stars and what have you. And so I think here what I did was each of them is slightly playing the other.
Hmm.
Like, okay, I'm coming around to you. And Zosha's like, I'm coming around to you. So there's
Yeah.
sort of like a less disparity and more reflective harmony between what they're wearing. But for me, overall, when you see Carol come closer to Zosha in terms of look and dress and appearance and a little upgrading, I think it's a decoy.
Ah, okay. That's like, for instance, in this photo here where they're on the stairs together, they kind of, it feels like they're both wearing sort
They're
of like,
mhm,
um, now this one,
homey, casual.
yeah.
Yes.
What really brought it home for me though was these outfits. And again, I was just, it wasn't until I was going through the photos that I was like, oh, I looked at this picture with Jane, and Jane is wearing, this sort of similar, I don't know what you call a Fair Isle sweater. Um,
Yes.
I don't know if that was
Yes.
purposeful, but it's sort of like they were almost kind of a bit matchy matchy. I think they had the same snow pants on in this scene,
Yeah, they
actually.
had the same. Yeah, the same blue snow pants. They were slightly different color, but amazingly, when I finally saw it on film, how lighting does tricks. They look like they're identical, but they're actually one slightly different with
Hmm.
the other. But again, it was that connecting unit I wanted to put forth. And yes, Helen, her wife, in that Ice
When they're in
Hotel
the Norway, I
flashback.
think.
Yes, yeah, that is a Fair Isle sweater, and I
Hmm.
brought reintroduced it. And a lot of that's a really good call that you noticed it, because nobody's ever called it out to me before, that they noticed that. So
I
kudos to you.
Oh, thank you. Well, you know what's funny though? I didn't notice while the show was on. It wasn't until like I downloaded the photos and I started going through
Mm-hmm.
them, and it was like, oh, Jennifer's planting some Easter eggs here for us, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
No, the other thing I was going to ask you. So this was something that I saw actually. Everyone on Reddit was asking about this. So Zosha
Hmm.
is in Morocco when we first meet her, and she's
Hmm.
wearing this like a caftan, I believe.
Yeah, or it's more likely captain's good, but I would more describe it like a jabella.
Okay, Jabella, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a local dress, I
Mm-hmm.
believe. So everyone was like, "Where did she come from? Like, how did she end up here? And why is she so filthy?" So, I mean, are you allowed to tell me that? Because I really would love to know.
I can't. I think season two will give you
Oh,
and the viewers maybe a better answer.
okay,
But
okay,
yes, it
that's
is Morocco,
okay.
and she's in a Jabella, and talk about making multiples of some. I think we also made like 10 of those because it had to show degrees of dirt,
Hmm.
and she's that filthy because the truck has been overturned, and they've been collecting bodies. Remember, she goes on the scooter with the young kid, and they are dragging bodies out of and loading up this truck out of the car that tumbled over the ravine. So she got really, really, really muddy. So she does all of that. She leaves Morocco. She flies to Albuquerque, and you see her get off the plane and walks down in the terminal to the terminal, and then gets into the shower, and she is cleaned up, and the next time you see her, wonderfully fresh and pristine, in her ivory cable knit sweater and a really cool pair of blue jeans. And that's when her first encounter with Carol. So she starts from Morocco.
Hmm.
Something, because remember, now this is a global event, so it probably could have been anywhere in the world, but Morocco is where Vince set Zosha's origins.
They hold up the book to show that they're trying to lure her. I don't know if that's the correct word. Maybe get her to trust them because she looks like Raban. I believe that's how you
Yes,
say it, Raban.
yes. Hmm.
And but a feminine version of Raban. So what made you decide on that particular look for her, that beautiful cable knit sweater and the jeans?
Because it's sort of like neighborly, friendly, ivory again, because I do use color as a tool in obvious ways, and then also for subliminal messaging, so that t-shirt and a jeans, a sweater and a jean, how you know how cool and calm that looks.
Mhm.
And basically why we chose that. Also, going forward a little bit more into the episode, she then helps Carol dig the grave in the
Mm.
backyard for
Yes.
Helen. She's in the same outfit, and that sweater was perfect to start to see a degradation that she's actually is, digging in this tough dirt in Carol's backyard to build this grave, sadly. And you see, again, high multiples on that sweater. Is dirt and dust and all of that. So we wanted to see a transition. Yes.
Now, before we run out of time, I want to talk about some of the 13. Now,
Hmm.
because they're from different parts of the world. So you've got Kusamayo, Manusos, who's going to be obviously a main character, maybe a foil,
Hmm.
maybe a
Hmm.
collaborator, and then Diabate, who is, by the way, he's such a riot. I love this character. My sister was saying to me that if she was
Yes.
one of the 13, she would have done what Diabate did. That she would have said, "Yeah, I'm going to surround myself with all my favorite foods. Maybe not the women, but all the locations. Being in a beautiful hotel, that was what she would do. I probably would be more like Carol." So we were sort of laughing about that, but. So the first thing I wanted to ask you about is this scene here. I don't was this a oneer? I like it felt like a one shot where they start off like with the
Pretty
cocktail on the tray.
much. Yeah, it was handheld.
Hmm.
It was amazing. So first of all, what I got to do, which is the opposite of what I did with the others, where everything clothing becomes not ornamental. We
Hmm.
did the reverse here because this is his fantasy to do, to recreate a sort of casino royale, James Bond, and with all the beautiful girls and the crap table and the baccarat table and all of that. And so what we did is, yes, it was. Our director, Ganja Monteiro, was amazing, and the way how she follows that cocktail glass,
Mhm.
and there's a cigarette girl, and if you watch carefully, you'll see some notables from that era. You see an Elvis Presley type character, you see a Audrey Hepburn type with a cigarette holder, Breakfast at Tiffany's,
Mhm.
um, folk singers. You see somebody that kind of reminds you of Old Blue Eyes, Mr. Frank Sinatra. So he creates this whole fantasy is created for him, right down to the guy that he's playing against at the table. This was really great because I got to do the opposite of what I do with the others. It was lush, it was ornamental, jewelry, accessories, the bling everywhere I could put it in the right places. This was a palette.
Mhm. And then, of course, he has all of these women that, surround like a harem of women who are all beautifully dressed. And, I think there's one scene where they're wearing like leopard fur coats or ensembles, like on the plane
Yes,
and at the
yes, yeah.
luncheon. And so I'm just imagining. So are you trying to go through his perspective? Like, what would he want in the ladies that are around him? Would he want them in leopard, or would he?
Well,
How
it
did you come up
started
with that?
yeah. Well, I'll give you a little bit. There's a really some historical reference to how I created his look. So the tuxedo that you see that's done
Hmm.
in the African print comes from a society in the Congo called sapeurs. And sapeur is the French slang for gear, clothing, you fit. And what these guys are blue collar guys, not high income at all, but they spend all their money on designer clothes, basically like a modern day dandy. And they'll go to Paris, they'll scoop up their money, go to Paris, or they'll get real Gucci, real Prada, all of the brands that we know. And they literally dress in this and parade up and down the streets. And they are local heroes. And so they kind of live beyond their means when it comes to their clothing budget. And this group of people exist. And I took that inspiration that he would have his tuxedo made out of African fabric, which is obviously the part of the world that he comes from. And um, and then also when you see the girls in the leopard outfits, if you notice, he's wearing a safari suit. It's a blush rose safari suit. So the idea was he's the big game hunter. And these
Oh, yes,
girls,
of course.
yes,
Yes.
yeah.
Because then he's
I
wearing
mean,
sort of that African wax print. I like that suit.
yes,
Sorry, I don't have, I'll put a picture of that in. I have to put that in. That when he's sitting at the table with
yes.
Kara on Air Force One, right? So, yeah, I love that. That's when he,
That's exactly what it was. It was a Dutch wax,
yeah,
African, authentic one, and we built this amazing tuxedo for
it's
him.
just beautiful. And also, I just love like his style all around is great. Like this outfit here,
Oh yeah,
and and
oh
then he
yeah.
also has.
He's
He's
living
just
his
like
best life.
he's like dripping, and I love
Yes,
he's standing in front of a painting of or a photo of himself, which just
of
cracks
himself.
me up.
Yeah, I designed all of those stills. So
Hmm.
we had a photo session with him in the lime green suit and a yellow thing all these crazy, you know, jelly bean colors,
Hmm.
and then the art department had them framed in these huge portraits and then put them all around the set, which actually, I mean, as little trivia, you might know this. This is actually Elvis Presley's penthouse in Las Vegas
Hmm.
that we shot this in.
Did you do it in the actual penthouse?
Yes,
Oh my
yes,
gosh, that's incredible!
yes,
I knew it was supposed to be his penthouse, but I didn't know
for
that you
real.
actually shot it there. That's
Yeah,
incredible. Now this is terrible because we have to wrap things up. So I'm thinking that I just
we
maybe
could
want
talk
to ask.
forever.
I know. I just wanted to ask you a little bit about Kusamayo, and because when
Hmm.
she's in the Peruvian village, and
Hmm.
well, actually, and also Manusos when he's in his when he's trying to go to like, what do they call it? The bridge. There's a name of it. So the gap.
Oh,
I should
trying to
call it.
get to the Darien Gap. Yeah.
Yeah, so he encounters people as well in his culture. So you must have had to have done a lot of research on those specific cultures and their, I don't know if you
Absolutely.
call them folk costume or just traditional costume.
No, these are traditional indigenous costumes.
Hmm.
They are genuine. And what I had to do, I did research depending on where he was traveling. So, in his case, when you get to the border of Colombia and you're coming into Panama, if you're coming in through the Darien Gap, because
There he
there's
is
no
there.
road that connects, and this is the way um, people get into the country. It's a real place. It's treacherous, and you can basically walk from there, from Colombia, into the border of Panama. And this is where you would, if you did such a thing, very likely you would come across the Guna people. That is an indigenous tribe, um, found in the some parts of South America, and particularly in Panama and the islands off of Panama. So that was a legit recreation of that particular group of people. And the same thing for in the Peruvian village. We did a
Hmm.
lot of research on Peruvian high hill communities, and Cosimayo's, the way her hair is braided, the little sweater she's wearing, her relatives, and then also in the village, again, authentic. And the actress herself, the young actress that plays Cosimayo, is actually Peruvian. So she was very helpful and brought me in some things that are, authentic to her country and to her culture.
Oh, that's wonderful. Um, the I hate to have to wrap up, but I wanted to just ask you before we wrap up. So I know that you said you were in Vancouver recently and you're shooting a new show. Like I don't know how you have time to do another show on top of Pluribus because I understand we are getting a season two. Is that
We
correct?
are. I'm just waiting for Vince to finish writing those scripts. The whole crew, we all are. And in the meantime, I was fortunate to get to go up to Vancouver to do a show up there. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you allowed to tell us a little bit about it, or is
Sure.
it?
It's
Yeah.
it's the third season of Percy Jackson and the Olympians.
Yeah. By
So,
the way, one of my fellow YouTubers, that's her favorite show. She absolutely adores it, and she
oh, it's
streams
great.
about it. Like they do weekly streams about it.
Oh, okay.
She's a
Yeah.
big fan, so I'll have to tell her that I
Awesome.
spoke to you. So, is
Yeah.
this your first season working on it though, or have you worked
Yes,
on it previous
yes. No,
seasons?
this is my the third. It's the third season of the show and my first
Hmm.
season on it, and it was great. Very different from Pluribus, obviously, but
Oh yeah,
you
absolutely. But it's
know,
kind of a modern. It's a modern sort of telling of these. Is it
Greek
Roman or Greek
mythology.
gods?
Yes, yeah.
Hmm.
But basically, for a costume designer, that's what you need to be able to do. You need to be able to absolutely recreate all kinds of, whether it's contemporary, whether it's historical, whether it's fantasy, whether it's world building. You should have all the tools necessary in your toolbox to basically be diverse in your work when it's called on, when it's needed for you to do.
Well, Jennifer, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. I am an absolute fan of Pluribus. It's absolutely incredible. My other favorite show on Apple Plus is Severance. So these both are like absolutely adore them. And of course, we're very excited that we're going to be getting another season. And
Yes.
I can't wait to see what's going to happen with all these
Me neither.
characters.
I have no idea, so I like everybody else.
You're
Don't know
like
what's
everyone
gonna
else
happen.
too. Yeah.
So
By
I'm
the way,
looking forward to the challenge.
just one more question: did you do a watch party when each episode came out weekly, or how did you consume the show?
What did I do? I All I remember is popcorn and a sofa.
Okay. Well,
And
anyway,
a
I'm
lot of
telling.
jumping up and down.
Yeah. Now, if you haven't watched the show, it is all the episodes are out right now on Apple, so
Yes.
you can binge it if you want. I had to wait between episodes, so everyone's really lucky; they can just binge it right now if they want to. But again, we had Jennifer Bryan. She's the costume designer of Pluribus, and I hope you'll come back sometime soon.
And thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. Well, and thanks everyone for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care now. I'm just going to stop. Here we go.
Okay.